What's up, my fellow ladies? It's Classically Savvy, your straight aunt from the 50s. And I have a lovely announcement for you all. I'm finally getting married to the love of my life, my fiance, Dave.
What's up? I'm Dave. Yeah, we're getting married, and after the wedding, she's finally gonna let me see her.
Oh, you big buffalo! Anyway, we're currently planning our wedding, and we're using advice from The Secret Power of Femininity, the book published back in 1969.
69, yeah, that's what she's gonna let me do after the wedding.
Oh, you rough old tiger. Anyway, we are using this book to plan our perfect dream wedding.
And our dream wedding night.
Oh, shush, you big old dinosaur. Since our wedding is in 3 weeks, that means it's time for me to go to the doctor. I have to make an appointment, but according to this book, Dave doesn't. That's because the doctor must confirm that I'm in perfect health, being thin enough to be beautiful by white religious beauty standards, but not too thin to get rid of my voluptuous hips that can be used to birth many, many babies. And he also needs to check all of my lady parts to confirm that I'm still a virgin. I hope that bike riding accident 10 years ago didn't ruin that.
Yeah, or that time you let me touch you.
Oh, you nasty tiger! You rude baboon!
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.
In September of 2021, Amazon Prime released a documentary called Lularoe, which was about the rise and fall of the Lularoe multi-level marketing company. I've already done a full in-depth review of that documentary, so I will link that up in the cards. But one of the most memorable pieces of that documentary for me was about a book that was mentioned within it. Deanne Stidham, who started Lularoe, was the daughter of Maureen Startup, who was somewhat of an anti-feminist business guru herself. In Lularoe, they mentioned that back in the 1960s, Maureen wrote a book about how to win men over by acting as weak and helpless as possible. Your voice should help bring out the contrast between you and men, too. It should emphasize your tenderness and your childlikeness. If I had this in a physical book, I'd be setting it on fire right now. My soul is leaving my body. Sorry, I cannot take any more of this book right now. There will be a part 2 to this video because there's still notes to go through where Maureen teaches us about how to prepare for a wedding. What's up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy. Welcome back to Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business, and today is your lucky day because today's video is once again about both books and business. Last week, I began my review of the book The Secret Power of Femininity, which was featured in the Amazon Prime documentary called Lularoe. So if you haven't seen last week's review yet, I highly recommend you check it out. I'll link it up in the cards and down in the description below. Towards the end of that video, I mentioned that there was a whole section in this book about how to plan your perfect dream wedding that I didn't even get to because the video was already an hour and a half long, and I was just, if I had to talk about the fact that men like women who are childlike one more time, I was gonna explode into a million pieces. So I mentioned that that would be a separate video, and that is going to be today's video. I am going to let Lularoe mommy plan my wedding for me. How's it gonna be? Tell me, mommy Maureen. Now, thankfully, today's video doesn't involve me actually planning a real wedding, especially since weddings can be very tough to arrange, especially for all of the food for all your guests and things like that. But since in reality right now I'm not planning a wedding, I'm just working from home, it was actually very easy for me to stock up on some great food that I had before filming this video with today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Magic Spoon, a high-protein, low-carb breakfast cereal that comes in a variety of fun flavors. During the past month on my morning show, Your Morning Guru, we've been talking a lot about building habits that serve our goals and how to make those habits a natural part of our day. And this cereal has honestly become one of my habits. As you all know, while I'm A, recovering from surgery, and B, not allowed to work out, I need to make sure I get enough protein to stay strong and keep healing. Because running my morning show has become a daily habit, I needed to compound that with adding a daily breakfast as a habit. I no longer wait until lunch to eat because I need that energy. And honestly, Magic Spoon cereal has been the perfect breakfast for me for my current goals. One serving of Magic Spoon cereal, which is about 1 cup worth of cereal, has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs, and is only about 140 calories per serving. The cereal is also keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. One struggle that I've sometimes had while I'm building habits is getting bored with doing the same thing every day. But in this case, I've been able to change up the flavor of cereal I eat each day because Magic Spoon has so many flavor options. As I mentioned before, cinnamon is my favorite, but the fruity flavor is quickly coming in second place. Go ahead and check out the link below to get some Magic Spoon cereal. You can build your very own variety box and use my code SAVVY for $5 off. You can choose from the best-selling cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, cookies and cream, and maple waffle flavors, plus other awesome flavors including blueberry and cinnamon. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee, so if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. So click the link below and use my code SAVVY for $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/savvy to save $5 on your order today. Also, for my Canadian and British viewers, Magic Spoon is now shipping to Canada and the UK as well, so go ahead and check out that link in my description below. Thank you again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring me.
Now let's get into planning our perfect wedding with Mommy Maureen, the Pyramid Scheme Queen. As we mentioned in last week's review, this wedding is operating under the assumption that you have dated this person for the sole purpose of wanting to marry them, that you were out seeking a husband this entire time. It's also under the assumption that you are marrying because you want to produce offspring together, and that your wedding is going to be religious in some way. These are all just kind of assumptions that the book takes based on last week, what it was telling us as women to do when seeking out this husband. So now that we've found him, now that we're getting ready to get married, Mommy Maureen, what do we do? So we are now over here in chapter 19, which is called Planning That Perfect Wedding Day for You. My guess is that it's not going to be the perfect wedding for me, but rather it's going to be the perfect wedding for my church and for all the people putting social pressure on me to make it the wedding that they want. That's my guess. Let's go into it and find out. And by the way, I'll be showing you guys some photos from my actual wedding and how, according to this book, it was just complete trash. Let's go. Let's take first things first. You must consider the customs of your locality and also your people, how they have been bound by these certain customs and traditions. It is wise to abide by these customs of religion, heritage, race, ancestral background, etc., because they have played a part in your growing up over the years. Your people are somewhat bound by them. You must respect these customs of your parents and make plans accordingly. If your religion is Catholic, you are bound by Catholic traditions and ways. If Protestant, then likewise, things are done according to Protestant ways. If Jewish, the same holds true. And there are still many other traditions that apply to each bride's background. Latter-day Saint brides make plans quite differently because of a temple ceremony for time and eternity, which requires a longer time than usual in attending the temple for the ceremony during the daytime and then in holding a reception later, usually in the evening. So you must respect the customs by which you are bound. As I just predicted, you said planning the perfect wedding day for me. And then you said, no, actually, this isn't about what you want. This is about planning the perfect wedding according to what your religion and what your culture tells you you have to do. You can't go against that because you are bound by it. You are bound just like your fiance is going to bind you to the bed on the wedding. Someone tell the Mormons about BDSM, please. And then on top of that, I just want to point out that this does not give any suggestions whatsoever on what to do if you and your future spouse are different religions. It says, well, if you guys are Catholic, you gotta have a Catholic wedding. If you're Jewish, you gotta have a Jewish wedding. If you're Mormon, okay, but what if one of you is, what if you're two different things? What if you're Catholic and he's Jewish? What if something like that happens? Is this book just assuming that that never happens? Is it just assuming that, like, obviously you're marrying within your religion? What kind of stupid person wouldn't marry within their religion? Is that what the assumption here is? Because she seems to say, just do it based on your religion. Well, which one of your religions? Both of yours, because obviously you're both the same religion, obviously. Now, neither Tyler nor I were particularly religious when we got married or now. I grew up in a Polish Catholic environment, and his family, I believe, was Protestant of some sort but doesn't really practice anymore, and so religion just didn't really play any role in our wedding whatsoever. And there are a lot of relatives I have that are still very invested in the Polish Catholic communities in Chicago, not in Poland, in Chicago. But there really was never any like pressure. My mom never placed any pressure on me. Her relatives never placed any pressure on me for that. It was just kind of like, what's the wedding that you want? Okay, do what makes you happy, because the wedding is about you guys and your future. Now, I will say, if you are having a big wedding with lots of guests, the wedding is also about entertaining the guests. So like, you want to make sure there's enough food and things like that. You don't want to have people have a miserable time there. But as long as I think you're balancing having the wedding be what you want along with having the wedding be something enjoyable for everyone, it really doesn't matter what else you do. And there are lots of people I know who just elope, especially in the COVID times, because having a whole wedding was nearly impossible. So if you don't even want to have like an official celebration, that's fine too. I guess weddings in this book are a purely religious concept, which makes it very weird that weddings are also a legal concept, right? Like if you get legally married, that changes how your taxes are filed, that changes what benefits you and your spouse have with each other and things like that. So I think that marriage can be both a religious and a legal concept. However, trying to mesh those together sometimes weirds me out because of like separation of church and state and all of that, but that's a whole separate topic. Let's continue. So if I were planning my wedding right now, I would need to be bound by Catholic traditions, but also if Tyler's the person I'm marrying, then he's not Catholic, so I'm also like not even really Catholic anymore. I just haven't been to a Catholic church in the better part of 2 decades. So I'm not really sure what to make of this. Let's keep going. Let's see what's next. Okay, so next we have a little timeline laid out telling us what we need to do before the wedding and how to time those things. So let's look at the bride's responsibilities first, as I am the bride and that's going to be my responsibility. A beautiful formal wedding takes a minimum of 6 months to arrange, provided nothing such as the armed forces interferes. The following list is designed to guide you in taking care of all details at the proper time. I will add to that, or a worldwide pandemic. Guys, just this past weekend I went to one of my best friend's weddings, and her wedding, it was the 3rd wedding date. Like her wedding, she originally sent out the invitations for January of 2021, like back in early 2020 when COVID wasn't really in the US at all yet and was like barely like it was barely even known that it was even a thing. So this was like, you know, December 2019, January 2020. She sent out invitations saying, okay, the wedding's going to be a year from now in January 2021. And we said, okay. Then guess what happened? COVID happened. She sends out a second invitation saying, okay, we're actually going to postpone the wedding another year to January 2022. We're all getting ready for the wedding. Everything's going to be great. And then in January 2022, guess what happens? The Omicron variant of COVID completely ramps up and is spreading like wildfire. So like a week before the wedding, she realizes she has to postpone it again. The wedding itself finally happened this past weekend, but my point is, yes, some things can interfere, COVID included. I'm really glad that her wedding has finally happened and everything's been going well though. So, I mean, setting the date, discussing your budget, selecting the size and style of your set, like that's all reasonable. Make arrangements to visit the clergyman with your fiance. Again, no discussion whatsoever on what if you're different religions and you have different types of just no discussion on that. Plan your reception and make necessary reservations. Choose and order your wedding gown, veil, and accessories. All right, you guys want to see my wedding dress? Here's a fun story. When I arrived at my wedding, this was September 29th, 2017, I arrived at the wedding. I saw the caterer there, and this is no shade to the caterer. She did such a good job. The food at our wedding was so good that people are still talking about it like years later because, again, my mom arranged the food, so she was like, I'm gonna go full Polish mom on this, which is what she regularly does, and is like, you're getting a full pierogi bar. It was fantastic. The food was fantastic. So no shade to the caterer. But what she did do when I arrived at the wedding venue is she said, oh, Savvy, I didn't recognize that was you at first because you're not in your wedding dress. And I was like, I'm not? How could you possibly say that to someone who's about to get married? She thought I wasn't in my wedding dress because I guess my dress didn't look like a wedding dress. But here's the thing is I wanted to wear something that I would like. So I will show you guys now what I wore to my wedding. There we are. That's me and Tyler at the wedding. So apparently because my dress wasn't white or long, it didn't appear to be a wedding dress. but it was dark gray because I don't think I look very good in white. I'm incredibly pale, so I was worried I'd blind everybody. And in addition to that, like, I just thought this was back when I still had massive titties before I got the reduction. So I thought that this style of dress kind of fit pretty well. It just made me feel more confident. I have a hard time feeling confident in a lot of formal clothes. And just at this time, because I was still suffering with body dysmorphia a lot, I was uncomfortable dressing in like traditionally feminine ways at all. So I pretty much never wore dresses for anything, but wearing like a tuxedo to my wedding would be hard because, again, I couldn't button anything because my boobs were so big compared to the rest of me. You guys get the issue, right? So I finally found this and I felt good about myself in this dress, so I wore it. My mom sewed the like sparkly buttons onto it, and I got those shoes. Oh, that was another thing when I was looking for an outfit for my wedding. I had to have something that would look good in shoes that weren't heels because I have scoliosis. And if I wear heels, not only will I not be dancing at my own wedding, but I will be laying on a heating pad or laying in downward dog yoga pose for the next couple of days. So I had to do something that was going to be okay for my back as well. So this is the outfit and shoes I chose. I guess it's kind of non-conventional, but that's us at our wedding. I thought it was quite lovely. Mommy Maureen thinks it's trashy though. Then we've got this one. Make an appointment for physical examination. Okay, they don't have this on the groom's side for things he has to do, so I was like, why do I as the bride have to make an appointment for a physical examination? I was very confused about this, and my first thought was, since this book has such a fixation on being thin and childlike, literally, no, oh my god. But since this book has such a fixation on wanting women to be very thin and in good health, even though their definition of good health is very different from most health experts I know, I thought maybe it was for that, to like make sure you were not getting fat or something. And then I thought, well, maybe it's to make sure that you're completely fertile so that you can like immediately start popping out babies the next day. And then when I mentioned this on Your Morning Guru, someone in the chat, or actually a couple of people in the chat, pointed out they may also be checking to make sure that your hymen is intact so that the groom can know for certain that you haven't been taking any dicks other than him before, or you wouldn't even be taking his, that you didn't take any dicks at all. Although, I mean, like, can't you break your hymen like riding a bike? Like, so that doesn't even say anything. It's just very weird. So very invasive, weird Mormon shit going on here. Again, hashtag not all Mormons. I'm just weirded out regardless. Page 238 is officially the page where I have been confirmed to be trash. Let's do it. This starts on the bottom of page 237 where it's talking about the wedding invitations. The formality of engraved copper plate or thermo-engraved wedding invitations demands equally formal wording. Names are always written in full, without initials or abbreviations other than Mr., Mrs., Doc, and Doctor. Numbers, including those in short addresses, are spelled out. Okay, so first of all, I did none of this on my wedding invitation. My wedding invitation, I drew a picture digitally of 2 donuts, and I put faces on the donuts, and I put big hair on my donut because I had big hair still at this time. And the donuts had faces and tasses, and it said, "You're invited to Savvy and Tyler's wedding. You donut want to miss it." That's what I made for the wedding invitations, and we put them in envelopes with people's names on them to send them to the proper addresses, and then we sent them. So that's my wedding invitation. Apparently I am complete garbage because I did not do any thermo engraved anything or copper plate engravement. I got these printed at Staples. And they just had donuts on them because we had donuts as our wedding dessert because I thought wedding cakes are kind of expensive. And I love donuts. I kind of want a donut now. For a church ceremony, say, "The honor of your presence is requested." For a non-church wedding or reception, it is "the pleasure of your company." Well, that's the first time they reference that you might not be having a church ceremony, so kudos for that. But second of all, why is it different? Why is it "the honor of your presence" versus "the pleasure of your company"? And why is honor spelled the British way? I'm very lost right now. In Utah, you're supposed to use the British spelling for things? I don't get it. You may request a reply to a reception invitation if it is a catered affair and your caterer must prepare for reservations, but not to a ceremony invitation by one of the following. RSVP, please respond, kindly respond, or the favor of a reply is requested. Note that honor and favor are spelled with a U. So again, yeah, we have to spell things the British way. Second of all, why is the ceremony and reception invitations, they're separate invitations? I'm really lost. And honestly, anyone who's had like a more traditional wedding, let me know in the comments if like I just did things so wrong and like this all sounds normal to you, because I'm reading this like, what? And like my mom planned my wedding because she was a wedding planner as her career for a while. So like she probably knows all of this and was just kind of going along with me wanting to be like, actually we're just gonna have donuts on the invitations, don't worry about any of that. So I never had to learn any of this shit, which is preferable. But for us, like our ceremony and reception were all just at the same place. Oh, I'll show a picture of our ceremony right now. You guys want to see it? So we had our reception at this fun place in the suburbs of Chicago. Turns out getting married in the wealthy Chicago suburbs is cheaper than getting married in the city of Chicago, because city venues are expensive, y'all. Anyway, we found an awesome venue to get married at. Fun fact, it turned out that our wedding venue is like 2 blocks walking distance from my plastic surgeon that did my breast reduction. So like every time I go in for a checkup, I'm like, I got married right there. This was our wedding venue right here. My mom did the decorations, and she, look at this pretty background of Chicago right here. That was that picture we did. Because a lot of people were traveling to Chicago for the wedding, and the wedding was in late September, so the theme was fall in love with Chicago. I was really into using puns for the wedding. So my mom wanted to do a theme so that she could have like a color scheme to go off of. So we decided the theme was fall in love with Chicago because it was the fall. And our invitation said you do not want to miss it. It was just puns. This was a wedding about puns. So we had our ceremony right outside the venue. And this, my best friend from college did the officiating. It was very fun. While we were, okay, you might see Chewy's little butt in the background here. That's because while we were getting married, like while we were exchanging vows, Chewy was off in the crowd watching with all the guests, and he had his little doggy tuxedo bandana on. By the way, that's the reason we had it outside. That's the reason we didn't have the ceremony part inside, because Chewy cannot be trusted around all the food, and I'm not sure the venue even allowed animals inside. And I really wanted Chewy to be at the wedding, so we decided that we hired his sitter for the night, and we had her kind of control him at the ceremony, and then she brought him home and watched him for the rest of the night. Yeah, we wanted him to be there for at least part of the wedding festivities, so we had the ceremony right outside, and while we were getting married, here's what happened. So we were just up here exchanging vows, having a good time, when all of a sudden we look over this way, and what do we see? Chewy's in the crowd whining. He doesn't understand. The poor puppy was like, wait, there's lots of humans here, but my humans are up there, and I'm not allowed to be up there with my humans, and my humans, why am I here? So he just started going, oh, in the crowd over and over again, and we were like, you know what, Chewy, come on up, buddy. So we finished exchanging our vows and officially got married with me holding Chewy's leash right there like that. Look at his little doggy tuxedo. Hold on, I'm gonna show you guys another doggy tuxedo picture. This is probably one of my favorites. Look how happy he looks. Look at his happy little face. He's looking right at the camera. I think someone squeaked a squeaky toy for him to look up at the camera, but he's like, yeah, that's my humans. I'm at their wedding. He's so cute. Oh my god. So anyway, this guide does not say anything about how to handle animals at your wedding, so I guess there are no animals at any of those weddings, but Chewy was like a little best man for us. Look at him. Look at his little face. So this is the part in the invitation section that really set me off and got me upset, because I do not like feeling dehumanized as a woman. Let's continue. A typical invitation to a formal church wedding reads, Mr. and Mrs. Richard Allen Barton request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Joan Marie, to Mr. William Howard Reed on Saturday, the 16th of July. All of that, okay? The invitations are from the parents, which I guess that's a traditional thing because the parents are... Actually, this is very weird. I don't like this. And just by the way, no shade to anyone who did their wedding following these type of traditional things. I'll tell you why I personally didn't want them for me. But if you did follow these traditional things because you thought they were fun or you thought they were cool or your family values them or whatever, please do not feel bad about that. Don't think that I'm judging you whatsoever. I think your wedding should be exactly the way you want it to be, just as my wedding was exactly the way I wanted it to be, right? It's more so that this book is trying to tell me that this is the right way to do my wedding, whereas like if someone else does this because they want to, that's great, but like I didn't want to, and I felt like people try to put pressures on you to try to have your wedding a certain way, and I'll tell you why I didn't like these pressures. But if this was your wedding, I hope it was super fun. Nothing nothing against it. It says down here too, invitations are always issued in the name of the bride's parents, even if she lives away from home. If her parents are not living, her guardian, a close relative, or a family friend may sponsor the wedding. The bride's surname is included whenever it differs from that of the wedding sponsors. Again, if you are a person who likes to do this with your name, please do. I just don't like people pressuring other women to do this with their name. I do not like it when people call someone Mr. and Mrs. man's name. To me personally, it implies that I as a human exist as a piece of my husband, that I am like his support, that he is the one who is like the real human and I am like a piece of him. I don't like that. It makes me feel like it's treating women in an inferior role. I think if you want to give out an invitation to somebody, put both people's full names. Mr. Richard Allen Barton and Mrs. whatever her full name is, right? Why not do that? That's what I don't understand. I have gotten mail in the past addressed to Mrs. Tyler Stewart, which is very weird. So I always give it to Tyler and I'm like, someone thinks you're a woman again. This is your mail. And it also is operating under the assumption that the woman must change her last name. The man is not changing his last name. The woman must, because the daughter doesn't have her last name listed, and the husband has his last name listed because the assumption is that her name is going to become his name. That's kind of how it comes across to me. Let's continue and see if that's how it is. But I will never write letters as to Mr. and Mrs. husband's name. I asked Tyler if at the wedding we could be announced as Mr. and Mrs. Savvy Lizer, and he said no. And I was like, well, fair enough. I wouldn't want to be announced with your name either, but I just wanted to check because I'm egotistical. And a lot of people think that this is not that big of a deal, but to me it is, because somebody not using your name when it's your name is like dehumanizing, in my opinion, for someone to just call you someone else's name. Like if someone calls me Tyler's name, like that, he's a whole separate person. We're married, but he's a different human being than me. I don't have his brain. Like, I'm a different person. So like, you're just not choosing not to recognize me as my own human. I also don't even share his last name. So it's very weird to me. I don't get it. I just don't, it doesn't make any literal sense to me, and I'm too neurodivergent to try to understand straight people bullshit. Then this part actually surprised me right here, where it says, when the bride's parents are divorced, a singular invitation is issued by the parent with whom she lives. If the parent has remarried, the step-parent's name may appear on the invitation, followed by his or her daughter to indicate the relationship to the parent. If host and hostess of the reception are different from those of the wedding, their names may appear at the top of the reception card, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so whichever parent she lives with, what if she lives on her own? Because it acknowledged earlier that women sometimes do live on their own before marriage. So if she lives on her own, but her parents are divorced, then whose name goes on it? Both of them still? It like tries to allow for different options, but then doesn't finish. Like, so it's like, okay, what happens in this other situation that someone may very well be in? What if both parents have remarried? What if, I don't know, there's just so much to go on here. Second of all, why are we even acknowledging divorce as a concept? I thought that the Bible said divorce is a sin, right? I thought you weren't allowed in this like very religious book. You're gonna tell me that divorce is okay? This book specifically, if you guys remember in part 1, it talked about the tragedy of homosexuality and how feminists are putting lesbians in the water to turn all the men gay. She didn't say that verbatim, but she basically said that. If you're gonna go by the whole the Bible calls homosexuality a sin thing, the Bible also calls divorce a sin, so why are you willing to acknowledge divorce as a concept instead of just being like, oh, if the parents are divorced, like, just don't marry her, they're going to hell anyway. Like, why not do that instead? Just at least be consistent, Mommy Maureen. Then there's a bunch of illustrations showing the wedding. This looks very complicated. Like, look at this. This is incredibly, like, what the procession, we didn't do any of this shit. I don't know what is going on here. This looks way too complicated for me. We did choose, like, a wedding party just for photos and to figure out the seating arrangements of who was gonna sit at our table at dinner. And then my friend, who was like one of the, like Tyler and I each chose, like, we didn't have like an official maid of honor best man kind of thing, but he chose 2 friends to give speeches and I chose 2 friends to give speeches kind of thing. And then we took photos with them beforehand. So Tyler told his friend like, oh, wedding party's gonna arrive at 4:30 to take pictures. And he didn't know what a wedding party was, which, to be fair, like, why would you know what that means? It makes sense that a wedding is a party. So I assume that he interpreted that as everyone arrives then. So he told all of our friends, like, to arrive at 4:30, so like a ton of people showed up like 2 hours early. It was really funny. And then we had a good time because everyone just kind of played with Chewy, and then some snacks came out. Guys, weddings can be chill if you let them. It's not a big deal. Ooh, guys, let's look at the informal wedding. I guess that's what I had, was an informal wedding. Let's see if I even got any of this right. For the informal wedding, the bride may wear a long white for a first marriage dress, or a pastel with a pretty headdress and shoulder-length veil, or a short dressy dress or suit and a becoming hat. I guess my dress kind of counts as like a short dressy suit. It wasn't like it was one item, but it was more like a business casual. We called our style fun business casual. That was the dress code we wrote on there. I did not wear a becoming hat, but looking back, I should have worn a becoming hat. Like, honestly, I didn't do too bad. I guess but is it supposed to still be white? I don't know. I think I did fine. There is only a maid of honor and perhaps 1 or 2 small flower girls. Oh wait, so is the informal wedding, is the idea that the informal wedding has to be small? My wedding was pretty big. We had like 100 people there. So I had a big wedding, but it wasn't very formal. Is that allowed in this book? Because I guess maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it does say right here, the list is small, of course. Never mind. We invited like all our friends, all our relatives. We wanted everyone we love to be there. It wasn't very formal. So no, we still did it wrong because even the informal wedding's supposed to be small. The advice would be just to have a quickie. Classically Savvy's fiance Dave is excited about this wedding. The advice would be to have a quickie, a marriage ceremony. Do your own thing and do your own spouse. And then we have this absolutely horrifying illustration right here. There's the couple dancing, there's their house, which is a quite lovely house, but I don't think I would want a house out in the country. I would want to keep living in the city, so I don't really ever want to have a freestanding house. It feels lonely. So I choose to continue living in my apartment building, but that's okay. But anyway, this woman right here seems very happy about all of these horrifying babies swimming in this smoke cloud. It was 1969, so everyone was smoking cigarettes like it was going out of style. She's probably just put out her cigarette and this big cloud of smoke is over here, and all the babies are floating up in it having a fun time, and a bird is singing. Cherie's dreams come true. A husband, home, children. Children are not in my dreams. I mean, they're in my nightmares. I'll be honest, I have pregnancy nightmares a lot. I regularly like have a nightmare where I got accidentally pregnant and it's too late to do anything about it, and I'm like all of a sudden about to give birth, and it's like horrifying, and then I wake up like, oh god, thank you, that didn't really happen. I guess that is one of my dreams, but it is one of my nightmares. Let's turn this into a horror movie. Savvy's nightmares come true. A baby was implanted in her and it's gonna pop out like Alien. And this is what's interesting too, is this book frames it as her dreams come true. So if we read through the book, it's operating from the perspective that this is what you want. The book does say, as we pointed out last week, the book does say at the beginning that this is for all women, including women who don't want to follow these traditions. This book is going to convince you why you should. But the things of why you should is that in the end, you will end up happy because you'll have your husband and children. But what if that's not what you want? What if that doesn't motivate you? Even in like the 60s, if I were like a cute young lesbian in the 60s reading this book, like, wait, so I'm doing this to get a man and pop out his babies, but I don't want to do that. And then it's like, you must follow these things, otherwise you will never find a man. And it's like, cool, I don't want a man, so I guess I don't need to follow any of these things. Like, the book is assuming that we're all motivated by the same end reward. This is not a reward to me. This is like a punishment. This is not what I personally want for my life. So the idea that if I follow the steps in this book, I will end up with this reward, I will end up miserable, so I would not want to follow the advice in this book. Does that make sense? It's just very strange. Like, when we always want to analyze who the target audience of a book is, right? And she directly says that the target audience is all women, including women who feel very feminine and just want to enhance that, and women who feel that they can't connect to these stereotypical feminine ideas that she wants to convince us why we should, right? So the book says that it's for everyone. But it's assuming that everyone has the same, and it's not that, you could easily say, okay, but maybe this book is meant for women who want to have a husband and children, and even if they aren't the perfect pinnacle of femininity, the idea is that it's still for women who want that. It's not, because she specifically repeatedly says throughout the book that feminism is a drain on society, and that women taking on masculine roles is bad for society as a whole, and we should stop doing it. So it's like, okay, but if you believe that, what is the motivation for a woman to not want to do that? She says the motivation is you'll end up happy with your husband and kids in the end, but if that's not what you want, that's not going to motivate you. Like, I feel like she needs to get a better understanding of motivation and reward, and that might be why this book didn't do very well, and why this book is now out of print and has been for a long time, because the book is operating under the assumption that everybody has the same motivation. At least her daughter, Deanne, in starting Lularoe, had a better understanding of marketing and motivation in that sense, I feel like. This is the manipulation of MLM companies, of companies like Lularoe. Deanne, Mommy Maureen's daughter, was able to figure out, okay, if all different types of women, I can figure out how to motivate with Lularoe. It's, you're a stay-at-home mom and that's what you want. You want to have kids and have your kids be the majority of your career in your life. Okay, well, kind of sucks that your family's poor, right? Isn't it awful that you have to survive on one income? Well, just start your Lularoe business. You can do it all from home with your kids, right? So she found something that motivates the stay-at-home moms. Now, let's say you are a career-driven mom and you want to be working outside the home. Okay, well, it's like, oh, well, you're a career-driven woman, but it's tough because your job didn't offer you paid maternity leave and now you're having trouble getting back into the workforce after giving birth. Well, what if you start this business from home? You can still live out your dreams of being your own boss, right? She found ways to market this company to different women with different goals, and because of that, the company blew up, made billions of dollars, and ultimately scammed tons of people. I think it's probably better for society that Maureen didn't know what she was doing with this book and didn't know how to target different groups of women, because she didn't end up scamming as many people. But if we're going based on the fact that these people are supervillains and their goals were to just make as much money for themselves in the end, Deanne with Lularoe did a much better job of scamming people and making a ton of money because she understood target audiences and marketing better. For all the talk in this book about being salesman-like in all of these ways, I don't know. This is just such an interesting case study. All right, let's go to chapter 20, The Marriage Union, A Life for Two. Our belief in an ideal goal. Mommy Maureen, what is my ideal goal now that I am married? The home is the basic building block of this estate or whatever society may exist. The eternal system of government, the patriarchal order, is founded upon a united family order. Because we have commas on either sides of the phrase the patriarchal order, it shows right there, because it's because of the two commas, one comma before and one after, that shows that the phrase the patriarchal order is meant to modify system of government. Patriarchy and government are tied together, and I think she's saying two things here. First of all, the implication being that a government is made up of mostly men, which is still true to this day, and that is a problem, but Mommy Maureen thinks it's great. Second of all, she's talking about the eternal system of government here, meaning not just like, you know, a state government or a country's government, but what governs the world, what governs the laws of the universe. And for her, that is the patriarchal order. So Mommy Maureen says, I recognize that the patriarchy exists. I want to keep it going. You feminists say fuck the patriarchy. I say I will fuck the patriarchy, but only to pleasure him. The home is the most perfect example of divine order here on earth. Its roles and responsibilities have no conflict. When governed by the eternal spirit, there is perfect guarantee of individuality, yet harmony and singleness of purpose. Okay, so I'm guaranteed individuality, but I have to also let my man be the head of the household? That doesn't sound like I'm guaranteed individual goals or wants at all. The man has been asked to be an acting head of the family, the earthly deputy of our heavenly Father in his stead, and to represent its views. To fulfill this calling, the priesthood has been given to man. This calling pertains to this life or estate and may not always be so. A man is called to be a presider, provider, and protector of the home and family, especially to his beloved and her offspring through his lineage, as long as he remains worthy and faithful. He is to be the aggressor in those accomplishments, yet must learn obedience to God and his laws. Man is endowed with the job of teaching justice and the law to his wife and family. Conversely, he is to learn mercy and compassion from the feminine influence of his white sweetheart and partner. Let me break this down. My husband is supposed to teach me justice and the law. He's supposed to teach me about how the world itself works. I'm supposed to be naive to the point of not truly understanding it and taking whatever he says as his word for it. He is supposed to learn mercy and compassion from me, which implies that when he came into the marriage, he was not a merciful or compassionate person. So it is my responsibility to make sure my husband is a nice and compassionate person. I don't choose a guy based on that. He can already be a complete asshole, and it's up to me to change him. and I'm supposed to be completely naive and it's up to me to follow his lead. Do we see how this can lead into manipulative, toxic, maybe even abusive relationships? Because if I'm going into a marriage with the understanding that, oh, I'm naive, I especially because this book has been targeted a lot at younger women, and it specifically talks about how men prefer women who are younger. Watch part 1 if you haven't already. The idea is that, oh, I'm marrying an older guy. He knows a lot more about the world than me. I'm supposed to be kind of naive about this and trust him. Well, now I'm trusting him and I'm trusting whatever he says. And on top of that, I'm supposed to also think, well, it's okay if he's a dick to me. It's okay if he's manipulative and not compassionate to me, because that's my job to teach him that. And if he is abusive, well, that's my fault as the woman. Isn't that kind of how this is coming off here? Do we not see how it's very obvious that this specific recipe could lead to abuse? No. So it kind of sounded in that previous passage like Mommy Maureen was acknowledging that the patriarchy is good and women don't need equality. But then she says this on page 262. Women today have achieved complete equality in the realm of married love. In the past 30-odd years, and particularly in the last 10, the taboos, ignorance, and misunderstanding which has obscured our vision for centuries have been washed away. So you're telling me that women have complete equality in marriage. In a book that was written in 1969, you're telling me that women have achieved complete equality in marriage, and I'm assuming you mean that legally. Okay, let's find out if that's true. We're on criminaldefenselawyer.com. This is an article called The History of Marital, I'm not going to say it out loud, SA laws. This was a term that was viewed by the law as an oxymoron until shamefully late in U.S. history. Until the 1970s, these laws in every state in the Union included an exception if the attacker and the victim were husband and wife. In 1993, all 50 states had finally eliminated this exception. So in the 1970s, in every single state in the United States, it was legal for a man to do things physically non-consensually to his wife, because it was considered that consent was implied by the fact that you're married. If you're married, you'd consent for life. It doesn't matter if you don't want it at that moment and he forces it on you, because you're married, so you consented for life. That's what this was saying. And in the 1970s, every single state allowed for this. If you wanted to take your husband to court because he did physical things to you without your consent, you would lose because he was your husband, right? Okay, so that was in the 1970s. This book was in 1969. This book was published before any state actually had outlawed this, and it wasn't until 1993. Guys, I was already in existence in that year. I was already a human in that year. This wasn't even before I was born, but it wasn't until 1993 that all 50 states finally made it illegal for you to do non-consensual things to your spouse. So I'm sorry, women and men have achieved complete equality in marriage in 1969? Not if you decide to say no tonight, you haven't. Jesus Christ. Mommy Maureen, you have a lot to answer for. Too bad you're dead. And just in case someone might be like, well, Savvy, maybe you're misinterpreting that a little bit. Maybe Mommy Maureen doesn't actually think that women have to consent at all times and aren't allowed to say no. Well, let's take a look at page 265 where she says, just as a wife caters to her husband's appetite for certain foods by cooking him the kind of meal from which he gets the most enjoyment, so should she be able and encouraged to cater to his fulfillment of the love appetite that is so in need of the right kind of indulgence. Let him and her both enjoy appetites with shared vigor. So it is my job to feed my husband food and also to feed him sex. No! Have sex when you both want it. If you both want it. It is up to you. It is up to every individual couple to decide what works best for them. And I agree with the idea of like, and you guys should both enjoy it. She does kind of say that, but she also frames it as like, it's your responsibility to do this still. It's your responsibility to feed him food. It's also your responsibility to feed him your body. Your husband is a vor fetishist, is what she's saying. Because women are not humans, we're furries, remember? Then over here she talks about if your husband has problems like performing sexually, it's probably your fault because everything's women's fault and women's responsibility in this universe. It's basically saying like if your husband is struggling with erectile dysfunction, she doesn't say it that way because that's too gross to say out loud, I guess, because you're directly referencing the penis and we can't do that. We can't talk about genitals in the chapter where we're talking about sex, God forbid. But she's talking about that. She's saying it's probably your fault as a woman because you're not being loving enough and you're not coming on to him enough. And I'm over here like, or maybe he could go to the doctor and see if he has a heart condition or something, because that really very well could be the problem, right? But over here it's like glandular disturbance was often blamed for her problem being the fact that she is frigid. That's what it calls the woman, frigid. But this is also very rare. Then frigidity is usually a psychological problem. It's all in the mind. So remember how in part 1 she is very dismissive of mental health concerns? So let's say you're in a marriage where you are not coming on to your husband very much because you're feeling like you're depressed. Let's say you're depressed and you have your sex drive has been lowered, and so you're just like really struggling with depression. And let's say your husband is also suffering with erectile dysfunction. What should you do? Well, this book says that the woman must come on to her husband more and be warmer and more loving, and that'll solve everything. I'm over here like, maybe you should both see a doctor, and like maybe if you're like dealing with some kind of depression, you should see a therapist or a psychiatrist to talk it out with a professional, and your husband should see like maybe like some kind of specialist to see if he has a heart condition or some kind of other physical issue that's causing that to happen, because generally it is actually a physical problem. As far as I know, I'm not an expert on this kind of thing, but that's what I imagine. So no, it's like, don't see doctors, don't worry about that, it's all in your head, everything's all in your head. And on page 267, she doubles down on this. Ladies, not only is it your fault alone if your husband is having sexual trouble, it is your fault as well if he has no ambition in his life and is just a lazy loser all the time. It is your fault because you did not fuck him enough. A married man who is happily married thinks about his own part in the great procreation process, that he is engaged mutually with his wife in the greatest accomplishment a man can have. He views himself and his net worth in proportion to his success or failure as a lover. If he is a success or a failure, this acts as a mirror that reflects his own opinion of himself in all walks of life, in everything he does or tries to do successfully. If he is, and know that he is, by the consistent reassurance of his feminine partner, a satisfactory lovemaker, he carries this attitude of success in all areas of life. You have heard wives say, I cannot understand why my husband isn't a successful provider. He has so little ambition. He doesn't even try to get ahead. He seems satisfied with an inadequate position or job. Why doesn't he forge ahead like the other men I know? Why doesn't he be successful so he can have the normal conveniences of a family living other people have? She may never realize, understand, nor wake up to the fact that it is to her credit or debit whether or not her husband feels exuberant toward facing life's challenges of getting ahead. So this literally says, if your husband sucks at his job, if your husband doesn't want to go to work and do his job and he just like sucks at everything and has no ambition in life, it's because you're not fucking him enough. You need to suck more cock and then your husband will be happy. This is literally, didn't Tony Robbins say shit like this? So that was part 2 of my review of it, The Secret Power of Femininity by Maureen Startup. There's probably even more in this book to unpack, so I will maybe do another video on this book in the future. And as others have pointed out to me, there are other books tangentially related to this book. Everything in this book is wild. The Lularoe family is a wild dynasty. I feel like there needs to be like a HBO series about this family or something. I cannot believe it. This is like Game of Thrones shit. Like, this family's like a literal Game of Thrones family over here. I cannot believe it. Anyway, that was today's book review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will see you guys again on Monday on Your Morning Guru and on this channel again multiple times next week for some more videos. But in the meantime, please continue supporting small businesses and have a fantastic start to your Friday. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.